Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. A very good morning to Sir Firaus and to all my fellow friends. Today our group will be presenting on Padri movement in Minangkabau. Before that, my name is Nurhanisa binti Muhammad Effendi. Now let's start with the first point, Islam in Minangkabau. There were multiple views on the exact date of Islam entered Minangkabau, and those were: some said Islam has entered in Minangkabau in 8th century, brought by Arab and Gujarat missions. Also, some historians say that Islam entered Minangkabau region in the 12th century, and also some say in the 13th century, Islam experienced a very extraordinary development. This was triggered by the establishment of trade relations between the kingdom of Pagaruyung and the kingdom of Aceh. Another view said that Islam is already arrived in Minangkabau in the 14th century. Islam identified in the Sufistic form was already established in Minangkabau in the 14th century. This view, however, was rejected as there was not enough evidence to prove the statement. It is unlikely that during that period, Islam was already in Minangkabau as the region was controlled by Aditya Warman, the ruler of Majapahit. Another view said Islam is already arrived in 15th century. This view was based on a local legend called Tambo, which highlights the idea of creation in the worldview of Minangkabau. Tambo is a collection of stories about the origins and rules of adat, traditional law. The Tambo has it that the world of Minangkabau was created from the light of Muhammad. At the same time, that two other worlds, namely Benua Ruhum, the Turkish Ottoman Empire, and the Benua Cina, the Chinese continent, were created. After the Ottoman Empire conquered Constantinople in the second half of the 15th century, the Ottomans established their political and cultural supremacy over some parts of the Malay archipelago. By associating themselves with the Islamic Ottoman Empire, the people of Minangkabau identify themselves as Muslim. The last view say that Islam arrived in 16th century. During the 16th century, King of Minangkabau and hundreds of his relatives and followers had already embraced Islam. The masses in Minangkabau then followed their leaders, joined Islam together. This view is considered more accurate and received approval from the historian Robin. Robin believed that the conversion of the people of Minangkabau to Islam took place during the period at the end of the 16th century and the beginning of the 17th century, when the Muslim kingdom of Aceh dominated the whole of Sumatra. Overall, what is clear that Islam might have come to Minangkabau before 16th century, but however, it was only in the 16th century that Islam was established as the religion of the majority. Now, let's move to the second point, Shataria, predominant school of Sufism in Minangkabau. Islam in Minangkabau was introduced and identified in its Sufistic form. The Sufism order that was responsible for the presence was Shataria. It was brought in by Sheikh Burhanuddin from Aceh. He was the leader of Shataria. He studied Tasawwuf under Sheikh Abdul Rauf Al-Singkili, a well-known Islamic scholar and Mufti of Aceh Sultanate. The primary text of this order is Kitab Menerangkan Agama Islam di Minangkabau, a book on the explanation of Islam in Minangkabau. This order was spread by Burhanuddin's main disciple into neighboring regions. By the second half of the 18th century, the order had become the soul of religious power in Minangkabau. Shataria order was able to absorb the culture and custom of the people of Minangkabau. From the beginning of the conversion of the locals to Islam, effort had been made to reconcile Islam with the values of local tradition and culture. The process of reconciliation was gradual, being step by step. Hence, Islam was first introduced into the coastal regions, Rantau, and only then into the Indian regions, Darat. Overall, the process of conversion in Minangkabau was smooth, peace and harmony without any pressure. However, as Islam went through the process of expansion, Islam was not peace as it was. There were certain groups representing Islam who are involved in violent acts and changed the image of Islam like the Padri movement. So that's all for me. Thank you.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. My name is Nurul Afika binti Muhammad Khalid. So let us move on to the Background of Padri movement in Minangkabau. Okay, what is the first thing comes across your mind when you heard this word of Padri? I guess you will imagine the Christian Padri, right? Don't worry, you are not alone. The name of Padri. Some argue that the call was made by the Dutch, referring to Padre Christian, from the Portuguese word padre, which means father. The title is usually given to the pastor. In Minangkabau in the early 19th century, the word padre or padri is still unknown. There are only golongan hitam and golongan putih. It was this golongan putih who later historians referred to as Padri. The naming of this group refers on the clothes worn by each group. Padri's appearance. Minangkabau villages under Padri must adopt certain rules of dress in accordance with the religious rules they believe in. Padri's clothes were polite, they were shod with shorts, their trousers reached their ankle, and their heads covered with white turbans. I guess the white turbans is like a servant, and they have long beards, and for the women Padri, they wear niqab. Alright, Minangkabau comprises of three regions, namely Agam, Tanah Datar, and 50 Kota. These traditional geographic divisions of the Minangkabau heartland, which is called Darat, also known in the local language as Luhak nan Tigo, which means three regions. The government institution has never functioned as a ruler in these regions and were not ruled by a king, but by a local ruler, namely Kepala Adat. The royal family rules only the coastal region, which is Rantau and their territories. Luhak nan Tigo became the site of Padri's movement since they were never in the control of the king. In the Minangkabau custom concept, there are systems, namely dua laras, which is Koto Piliang and Bodi Caniago. Koto Piliang is more hierarchical, where it recognizes the hierarchy of leader within a nagari, which means desa, while Bodi Caniago is based on the principle of egalitarianism, where the nagari is led by a group of leaders representing prominent or certain tribes. The Minangkabau political system had some changes and was followed by three kings after the Islamization happened in the 16th century, namely Raja Alam, the king of nature, and the Raja Adat, the king of custom, and the Raja Ibadat, the king of Islamic religion. These three kings are also referred to Raja Tiga Selo. From here, we can say that Minangkabau has no centralized ruling system that later became as one of the factors to this Padri movement that will be explained by the other presenter.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nur Atira binti Dawud, and now we proceed to the ideology of the Padri movement. First ideology is the intellectual fundamentalism of the Padri movement. Fundamentalism is an ideology that based on literal interpretation of scripture and strict adherence to the basic principle of any subject or discipline. And in fact, this fundamentalism of the Padri movement has been influenced by the Wahhabi movement. And also, both of this movement, Padri movement and also Wahhabi movement, they were united by the same objective, which is they required Islam to be implemented purely in society in accordance with the Quran and Sunnah. And Padri movement had a strict understanding and its main objective calling the people of Minangkabau for a return to the earliest fundamental Islamic sources of the Quran and Sunnah, or basic of Islam that written in the Quran and Sunnah. As mentioned before, it seemed to be clear that the Padri movement was in many ways a reincarnation of Wahhabi movement, even though it was not a perfect replica of the latter. For instance, in their overt attitude and covert propaganda against Tasawwuf, these two movements regard Tasawwuf as misleading because they considering Tasawwuf did not exist in the time of Prophet, then it must be banned. The Padris also maintained that the people of Minangkabau were sinful because they commit something not ordained by God in His Sharia. And also, Padri movement, just like Wahhabi, the Padris were fond of labeling other people bid'ah for practicing superstition, hypocrisy, and certain form of ritual such as gambling, cockfight, drinking alcohol that flourished in the Minangkabau community at that time. Other than that, for the Padris, Islam could be understood only as they interpret it. No other understanding and interpretation were true. The literalistic nature of their approach toward the Quran and the Sunnah seemed to have made them unable to look beyond the literal meaning of the two major sources of Islam. Their method is deeply rooted in a literalistic textual kind of approach. When a literalistic approach is applied, it may lead to the reading of religious texts separately from the historical and moral context. In this method of interpretation, the substantive contents of the text may be ignored. Up to this point, one might conclude that the result is rigid, one-sided, and inauthentic interpretation of Islam. There might be no apparent danger in this approach, but it leads to strange consequences. For example, the first one, the Padris obligate man to grow his beard, or else he will be fined. And for the second one, women who appear in public without wearing a burqa, which means covering her whole body except her eyes and hand palm, also will be fined. And the last one, a person that found neglecting the salah was to be punished for the first time with a fine, but for the second time, he will be condemned to the death. From this point, show that the Padri movement were unequivocally fundamentalism because these movements tend to legitimize their act and justify them on the basis of religion, regardless of whether or not this act were against moral norm or religious. Second ideology is the radicalism of the Padris. From the discussion before, we can conclude that fundamentalism of the Padris lead to the radicalism of the Padris toward the society. Radicalism can be defined as any of various radical social or political movements that aim at fundamental change in the structure of society through violence or physical force. Like Wahhabi, the Padris employ physical, often violent, in order to force people to change their mind, belief, and traditional custom. Also, in order to gain people support, Padris employ a deliberated policy of violence unfavorable to both society and religion. On this ground, it is legitimate to argue that this movement was radical outright. The Padris used violence not only as a means of intimidation and victimization, but also as an effective strategy to propagate their idea and reform mission. Next, the Padris were radical as they commit atrocities against the innocent people of Minangkabau and represent the same form of radicalism by using religion and economic ambition respectively. Both victimized the local people and reduced them to a state of mental disorder. The radicalism of the Padris may be found in two domains. First, in their discursive interpretation of Islam, and second, in their day-to-day attitude toward others. Violence was the rule of the day for the Padris. In fact, there were many examples of the violent act that the Padris commit. First, the assassination of the royal family of Pagaruyung Tanah Datar. This tragedy happened when the Padris and representatives of Kaum Adat were involved in an argument on religious matter. In that argument, one of the Padris leaders alleged that some of royal family were abandoning the tenet of Islam. Because of that, they had become infidel and must be killed. The Padris murdering all India way, including the leading members of the royal family, one of the king's assistants, and some royal clerics. Several years later, in 1815, the Padris led another attack on the royal family. They murdered all its living members, and also the kingdom of Pagaruyung experienced attack from the Padris on many occasions. So, as a result, the kingdom of Pagaruyung finally collapsed. For the second example, the violent act that the Padris committed to their own family members, for example, Tuanku Narenche, who was responsible for suffering and death of his own aunt just because she ate sirih leaf, something that forbidden according to the Padri law. When that poor woman died, he decreed that the body should not be properly buried but be thrown away in the bushes.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. InsyaAllah, I will continue to factors of Padri movement in Minangkabau. There are 4 factors that I found from a few books, which are 3 hajj written from Mecca, separation of custom and Islam, interfere of Daesh in Padri and kaum adat's conflict, and the last one is economic change. Okay, for the first factor, it came from 3 hajj who had returned from Mecca, whose are Haji Sumani, Haji Piobang, and Haji Miskin. These 3 haji broke the influence of Wahhabi, and this movement was smooth because they got support from Tuanku Imam Bonjol and some other leaders at the Minangkabau. So it started in Arabia by Alwi Shihab, and the founder is Abdul Wahab. At that time, Padri group considered that there are a lot of practice superstitious, politics and pagans, but the Pious group did not solve it. So they make this movement to solve this problem. As we know, Abdul Wahab also follow Mazhab Hanbali, but there are something wrong when he only hold the Quran and Sunnah as his guideline. And he also rejects all methods of Islam as the guideline of life. For example, method of qiyas, method of ijma' ulama, uruf, and other interpretation. Okay, for the next factors, separation of custom and adat. It begins when people in Minangkabau practice their tradition, and some of them are bad habits. So, for example, chicken coop, drunkenness, and some other criminals. So, Padri group want them to leave all their tradition and just practice Islam that they broke at that time, which is Wahhabi. But in fact, there are adat jahiliyah and adat Islamiyah. So Islam allowed adat Islamiyah, and Islam still allows some tradition that are not contrary to Islam. Then this action was provoked anger among the kaum adat, and it broke out to Padri war. Next, we move to the third factors, interfere of Daesh in kaum adat and Padri conflicts. So Daesh intervened in this conflict on Padri war phase 1. Kaum adat asked for their help to fight with Padri group. But Padri won, and Sultan Arifin Munin Shah, who led kaum adat group, was run away in the phase 1. So after that, kaum adat realized that Daesh have their own interests in Minangkabau, and they had no choice to fight with the Daesh. So they joined Padri group to defend their district from Daesh. So at that time, Padri movement was strengthened because they got support from kaum adat. But at the end of the war, phase 2, unfortunately, Padri lost in Padri war, and Minangkabau was fall into Daesh at the end. And the last one is economic change in Minangkabau. This factor because of There are development in economy activities in Minangkabau, and they have demand for export crops, especially in agricultural products, and it spread out to the other country. When the other country know about this export, their mercantile network is expanding rapidly, and Padri Group use this opportunity to spread their religion to the traders. So that's all for me, and we will continue to the next slide.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nur Syuhada Adia binti Ali Hassan. As the last presenter, I will present about the impacts of the Padri movement in Minangkabau. So I divided the impacts of the Padri movement in three categories: economy, social, and politics, and we will see briefly one by one. First, in terms of economic view, when the Padri started to spread the Islamic teaching in most areas in Minangkabau, Islamic educational such as surau began to flourish. Second, the Padris invaded the areas with rich natural resources only and took as their bounty agricultural products such as rice, corn, sugarcane, and coffee. They did that because they needed to fund their propagation as well as their war against other tribes, foes, and above all the Dutch. Next, we move to social view. The Padris decided to make each village in Minangkabau must be turned into an Islamic community as fast as possible because the non-violent warnings had been ignored. And when they had been ignored by the Minangkabau community, the Padris used physical, often violent, means to force people to change their minds, beliefs, and traditional customs. The rigid stance of the Padris must have been the result of their method and approach in understanding the text of Islam, and their method is deeply rooted in literalistic textual kind of approach. And then, this approach led to strange impact. For example, the Padris obliged men to cover his birth or else they will be fined. And a man who walked in public with his leg bare would also be fined a certain amount of money, and so women who appeared in public without a burqa covering her whole body except her eyes and hands also will be fined a certain amount of money. Next, a man found neglecting the Salah, the compulsory 5 prayer, was to be punished the first time with a fine of 5 gulden and the second time to be condemned to death. Guldens means gold coins or silver coins. And the Padris not only indoctrinated people but also imposed on their codes of conduct and dress. Thus, the Padris forced people to wear a long white dress as the compulsory form of male dress, and those who disobeyed this order would be punished. And then the Padri also formulated religion-based laws that were contradictory. For example, slavery was permissible, and as we know that this is obviously contradicted with Islamic teaching. And most of the Padris became too obsessed with the Islamic teaching and they went beyond of it. So this is the impact of the Padri movement in terms of social view. Next, we move to the last category, which is politics. And in terms of political view, the Padris killed the royal family of Minangkabau and also the Adat people in establishing their firm on belief in Islam. The Adat people were forced to practice their understanding of Islam although they don't want to follow it. And the Padris started a war against villagers who refused their ideas, which resulted in the Padri conquering Minangkabau in 1820. They reorganized Minangkabao's government with their own rules. Consequently, the royal family in Minangkabau asked the Dutch to help them fight the Padri. However, the Dutch at that time did not have any authority in Minangkabau. In order to get Dutch assistance, in 1822, the Adat people and the Dutch made an agreement in which the Adat people gave tanah agam, tanah datar, and 50 kota to Dutch as they trusted the Dutch could assist them to fight against the Padris, thus eliminate the influence held by the Padri. The first Dutch attack upon the Padris followed shortly thereafter, and the Padri War began. The Padris were well known as good warriors, where they won the battles and made Minangkabau as their fortifications. The Padris also decided to make an alliance with the other leaders not long after that to go against the Dutch, since the Dutch seemingly wanted to take over Minangkabau as their stronghold. The Minangkabau's people agreed with the alliance to avenge the Dutch because the Dutch broke the agreement. Then Padris and other people started wars against the Dutch in 1832. Unfortunately, the Dutch won the battles and the war between them came to an end. Padris leaders have been arrested and banished to other parts of Indonesia. And finally, the Dutch dominated Minangkabau, the last and the most important stronghold of the Padri. Although the Dutch dominated Minangkabau, Minangkabau still remained an Islamic region like the early time of their history.
Okay. In conclusion, Padri movement used religion as a tool to fulfill their own selfish satisfaction, even though at first their main objective was genuine, which they want the society of Minangkabau to return back to the purest form of Islam, that is, to the original form Islam revealed to the Prophet Muhammad SAW. However, the method that they implemented is totally opposite to the real true teaching of Islam. Thank you all for being here today and taking the time to patiently listen to what we had to say. And we wish you all a blessed day. Assalamualaikum.